Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar presentation today of MicroLogix to MicRO800. At this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to our host today, Thad Bischoff.
Good morning, everybody. Again, Thad Bischoff here. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm actually with Rexel out of Solon office. I'll be doing a bit, part of the presentation, and then Mike will pick up some of the demonstration at the end, and then John's going to manage the chat. So, all right. I presume everybody can see my screen okay?
Looks good, Thad.
Okay, great. So the goal is try to get through this relatively quickly and then get on to a product demonstration that Mike's going to do. Again, our agenda for today, we're going to talk about the MicroLogix life cycle, review MicRO800 product line, do a CCW overview, and then a program migration from a MicroLogix application or program to CCW. So just a real brief overview. If you want to look at all of Rockwell controllers, this is a good slide on what Rockwell presents and discusses today. And we're going to focus everything here on the right or left-hand side of the MicRO800 controllers and the 1400 controllers. So a little bit of review on the current status of the MicroLogix product line. So if you're familiar with it, there was actually from the very beginning 5 different MicroLogix controllers. 1,000 up to the 1,500. As of last month, all of them are obsolete except the MicroLogix 1400. So if you have a 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, 1,500, those are all obsolete. The only one that is currently shipping is the MicroLogix 1400. That is classified as active mature within Rockwell, which means there's no new enhancements going to be done to that product. But we are still stating that that product will be around till 2030. Now, with all these issues that we're having with component shortages, I don't know if that's going to be valid in another year or so. Rockwell's really pushing, and we're pushing for customers to migrate their MicroLogix applications to the MicRO800. First of all, the MicRO800 is a controller that has higher functionality than the 1400 or any of the MicroLogix, and it comes in for the majority of the time at a lower cost. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that the existing MicroLogix line, the only one that's currently available today is the 1400. So is there any questions on that before I move on to discussion around the MicRO800? No? Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the MicRO800 controllers. This product, a lot of people feel this is a relatively new product, but it's actually been around for about 10 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And there's a total of 5 different controllers available in the family. We've got the 810 through the 870 product line. The 810 was one of the original released products. It replaces the old Pico controller. That's one in the bottom left here. It's a small 12-point simple controller designed as a relay replacement. No network type connections, just strictly a USB port on the front for programming. The next one up the line is the MicRO820. That is for nice small standalone applications. It's got some Ethernet capabilities and a couple other things. And then we go to 830, which is non-Ethernet, and the 850, and then the 870. As you can see, we can actually get up to over 300 I/O points for these products. So you can really fit into a lot of small, nice applications with this product line. So I'm going to now go into additional slides with a little bit more detail about each one of these. So the first one is the 810. Again, this is a very simple 8 inputs, 4 outputs. Those inputs can be configured as DC inputs, or you can actually configure some of those for a 0 to 10 analog inputs. You can have an optional display on the front for programming, but not sure why you would want to do that, because the software to program these controllers, the MicRo800 series, is called CCW, and it actually comes available for free. And I'll explain a little bit about at the end. But again, nice, small, simple application. Really a nice point about it is these relay outputs on these units are very high amp, 4 or 8 amp relays on the output, so you can use those in a variety of different applications. If you are utilizing this controller, you will have to purchase this adapter to be able to connect up a USB cable to it. Without the adapter, you will not be able to connect up or plug into this. That's just one thing to be aware of. But again, this controller is right around $100. Nice little small, simple type controller for small applications. The 820 is actually one of our higher selling MicRo800 controllers. What you see here on the slides is on the right hand side is a controller, and on the left side is a optional display that you can purchase that interfaces with the 820. The 820 itself, you've got your digital inputs, you've got your 4 analog in, 1 analog out. You have a option for plugins on the front. You've got 2 plug-in modules that you can see here right on the front, and I'll talk about the different options for plugins. But if the additional base itself does not have enough I/O, if you need 2 additional analog, you can replace one of these blank covers with a plug-in module to add some additional I/O capabilities. What is nice about this, it has a built-in SD card and a slot. You can back up your program to it. You can do data logging. You can do recipes. You can do a lot of little things with this controller for a few $100s. And then if you want to add the optional display, you can get 4 character lines on the front for some numeric type displays and text displays to basically demonstrate or show what's going on in your operation. But what you're seeing here, this whole thing is like $400 or $500, a complete package you can get with this. Really nice, small, simple type applications. The next one is the 830 controller. This really fits around replacing the MicroLogix 1200. It actually comes in 3 different sizes, or 4 different sizes, 10 and 16 point controllers, a 24 point controller, and a 48 point controller. Different variations of AC or DC inputs, or relay or transistor type outputs. All different options that you can pick for your actual selection. And again, depending on the size, you have 2, 3, or 5 plug-in modules for additional expansion. What's nice from the 830 on up is you've got a run program switch. You can toggle it back and forth. You have a USB port and you have a serial port, all available for you to use. One thing, if you notice on the upper left-hand corner of this slide, is it says 24-volt power supply. What I mean by that is all of our controllers in the MicRo800 series are powered by DC. There is no AC options. If you want to have AC, we have a power supply that kind of connects right to the left of the controller itself, kind of mounts right next to it on the DIN rail that you can use to bring in 120 volts to your controller. And I'll have another slide for that so you can see that. Next controller on the list, it goes up to the 850. And this is what we're going to really highlight today, because the 850 and the 870, excuse me, are the ones that we really utilize to replace the 1400s and maybe the MicroLogix 1500s because of the I/O capabilities. So on the 850 itself, there's actually two base units. One's a 24-point, the other one's a 48-point controller. And then you can actually put expansion modules onto the side, up to 4 for additional I/O. We have 32-point cards, we have 16-point cards, we have 8-point cards. That's how you can get to the higher density I/O in this platform. And you can see just with some of the pictures, you've got plug-in modules for all different variations. This has Ethernet, serial, and USB to connect up to the controller. USB is mainly used for programming. Then you got the serial port and the Ethernet port for programming and or additional uses. Okay, a lot of different options. Supports up to 3 axes of motion, pulse train output. Very functional controller at a very low cost. Any questions on the 850? Okay. The 870 is, again, I'll just call the premier controller within this product line. It has 2 times the amount of memory as the 850. It can handle up to 20,000 steps or different instructions within your ladder logic. The base unit only supports 3 plug-in modules, so it's kind of fixed with a 24-port controller, but you can put up to 8 I/O modules onto the side. If you go beyond 4, you end up having to put this power supply expansion module in the middle to continue out with the other 4, but a total of 8. It also gives you, again, all the different comms I mentioned before. We can do Modbus RTU, and ASCII, and that's the same thing with the 850. And we also have the open socket programming, which you can communicate to any third-party controllers over Ethernet. So again, this controller and the 850 are the premier controllers that gives you all the functionality that we've had in the other controllers. One thing I failed to mention, this is based off of this program with ladder logic, but it also, you can program these in 2 other languages, structured text and function block. And those are also comes free with CCW. It's not an added charge. Okay. So up until last month, these were the 5 controllers that we had, but we just released a new series of 850 and 870 controllers that have additional functionality with the serial ports. Highlighted mainly right here in the middle. Before, we just had DF1 full duplex, but with this latest release of this series of this controller, we now have half duplex and radio modem off the serial ports, but we also have DNP3 for wastewater type applications. Again, this is now with the latest release of the new 850 and 870, which also has additional security protection and improved performance. And I've got a couple slides to talk about that. So these new controllers are series or firmware 20 only and above, and you do need to have version 20 of CCW in order to program this. Just for specifics, we've actually, these were the old catalog numbers of the 850s and the 870s. We've now released new catalog numbers with a designation of an E, just to help make sure people understand if these controllers have Ethernet or don't have Ethernet. And then you have the option at the bottom to get the DNP3 with the comms. Okay. These are the new catalog numbers. Now, what is actually shipping? The 870s are shipping today. Those are available. The 850s will not be shipping until towards the end of September, and that's mainly focused around component shortage and availability of product. Okay, but they're designed, the 870 and the 850. 870 is shipping today with those added functionalities of security, performance, the enhancements on the serial ports with the DNP3. Okay. Let's talk about performance. And this has always been a discussion with a lot of customers I've talked to, is the performance of the MicRO800 product line. Well, with this new release, download time and upload time is improved. Download time has been improved by 40%. Upload time by 25%, which is obviously going to help with development time and things of that nature. Overall, you've got code execution is up to 3 times faster than it was previously in the older versions of the 870. Again, the 850 is not releasing yet. We'll just talk about the 870. So if you kind of look at it, math instructions, messaging, IO read writes, copy instructions, all those have about an average of a little under 3.5% or 3.5 times faster than the previous MicRO850, 870. And this is noticeable when you take a look at the program itself. And even when you open up and when Mike looks at CCW later on, you'll notice there's an improvement just on how CCW version 20 opens up and operates. So I think it's a really big improvement for this product line to surpass and help with all the expectations that people have with this product. Okay. So let's a little bit talk about the expansion modules that are available for the 850 and the 870. Again, these are the expansion modules that go onto the side. Now, just a refresher, the 810 is that small controller. There's no expansion capabilities at all. The 820, 830 have plug-in modules that are that offers expansion, but no modules that go onto the side. It's the 850 and the 870 that have plug-in modules and expansion modules that go onto the right side of the controllers. So what you see here is just different variations of the IO modules that you can connect onto the right side of the controller. Again, you see different variations. You got AC inputs. The IM8 there is for 240 volts. You got DC inputs, different variations, relay outputs, a lot of different thermocouple modules. We've got some modules from Spectrum Controls. Again, a variety of modules available to really maximize the capabilities of this controller. Okay. If you want to look at the plug-in modules that go onto the front of it, these are not as high density. You have 2 or 4 channel. You do have some combo modules that have 4 DC in and 4 DC out to utilize. But again, it's usually smaller density if you need 2 additional analog or 2 thermocouples, or maybe you need a trim pot to maybe have some sort of adjustment on speed or something like that. We also have a plug-in module to add an additional serial port. So you don't, if you still want to use the front serial port for DF1 that's built into the controller, and maybe you want to use a serial ASCII, you can get the plug-in module goes on the front and get you ASCII communications off the front. We have additional backup memory with real-time clock. There's actually a device net scanner you can purchase. One thing to keep in mind, that device net scanner is limited to Rockwell products only, specifically the PowerFlex drives and the compact block LDX modules. We have the high-speed counters. We actually have a module from Spectrum Controls If you recall from when I talked about the MicRO820, the MicRO820 had a built-in SD card slot for program backup and recipes and data logging. So now there's a plug-in module that you can plug into the front of the 830, 850, and 870 and get that same functionality of being able to back up the program, data logging, recipes, etc., to an SD card. Again, we're a lot of different variations. We've got waste scale modules from Hardy. We've got different variations for this. So it's really, really nice to be able to customize the basic or the base controller with different variations with these plug-in modules. Now, a lot of people have asked me, if I just need 2 analog ins, what is better? Should I use a plug-in module for the front? Or do I use an expansion module on the side if I'm using 850 or an 870? Well, I don't have the slide available. It's on this deck, but it's hidden right now. But the plug-in modules do not quite have the same performance as the expansion modules that go onto the side. So that's one thing to be aware of. The resolution of the analog cards are slightly less, and the response time of the I/O cards are slightly less for the plug-in modules compared to the expansion modules. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're designing a system, is what type of response time that you need. If you need a higher response time with some analog or higher resolution, then go with the expansion modules. If you're okay with just some standard type performance, the plug-in modules are perfect. Okay. I mentioned earlier about all these units is DC power. Here's a picture of the 2 power supplies that kind of connect right to the left side or mount right to the left side of the controller. And it's wired externally from the power supply over to the controller. But when you utilize this one, it looks like a nice clean setup with that it looks like it's designed to be all one unit. Let's now briefly talk about the CCW software before Mike does a demonstration. So the CCW software, which is known as Connected Component Workbench, has actually been around for a long time, and it's utilized to program the MicRO800 controllers, but it also can be used to program our PanView800 controllers and PowerFlex drives and our CR30 safety relays, some light curtains, all different type of packages or hardware you can use to program with the CCW software. Okay. I just kind of went over. It is based off of an IEC 61131 language, and like I said earlier, the ladder diagram, function block, and structure tech is all built into it. Again, it's a very nice software that comes free to program the MicRO800 series. Now, there is a paid version. Okay, so if you look at this slide, on the left-hand side is the free version, and you can see all the different variations and changes. The biggest thing that you'll see is the 4th or 5th one from the bottom is run mode change. That's online editing. The free version does not offer online editing. If you want to have that capabilities, you have to go to the paid version, which is about $525 for a perpetual license. Will give you the run mode or the online editing capabilities. And you can see there's different other functionalities. What is also built into CCW is a simulator. For the free version, the simulator only runs for 10 minutes. The developer will run for 24 hours. Okay, so you have different options. You can kind of see where you're at on the different variations of CCW software. Most OEMs and machine developers will buy Developer Edition. End users who are dealing with the MicRO800s on the plant floor will just utilize the CCW free version. Another thing I failed to mention is support when it comes to the free version. So if you utilize and download the CCW free version, tech support is free for that software. Tech support for the MicRO800's controller is free. So along with having a very low cost controller, high functionality controller, the support for those controllers and for the software, as long as you're using the free version, is free. It's included with your purchase. Now, going to migrating an existing application. There is a converter tool that Mike will show you that you can actually take a MicroLogix 500 program and you can run it through a converter and it'll switch it over to CCW based software that you can download to your MicRO800 controller. You also have the ability to do some copy and paste if you want to have some ideas on some ladder logic and functionality from Studio 5000 to CCW. But it's designed mainly around converting your existing MicroLogix 500 programs with MicroLogix 1400 or 1100 or whatever it is to a MicRO800 series controller utilizing CCW. Okay. Now, people want to know, why would you use this? Well, if you've got an application with a controller, let's say a MicRO850, an HMI, a PAMView 800 7-inch screen, and a PowerFlex 525 drive, all that is included or encompassed into a single project within CCW. One file will have all three programs or setups for those devices. So if you're a small machine manufacturer and you're shipping a machine out, it's one project file that handles everything in your application: the HMI, the drive, and the controller. Single application for everything you need. And if you mentioned here, we've got a lot of different type of communications available. There's actually a BACnet module also available from Spectrum Controls to talk BACnet if you deal with HVAC systems. Again, one software package to do a lot, and just here a lot of different pictures here. Kinetics drives, PAMView 800, our Guardmaster light curtains. A lot of different things can be programmed within the CCW software. Okay. Any questions on what I just discussed before I throw it over to Mike for the demonstration of the software and the migration? Nope. All right, Mike. I will no longer share my machine, and it's turned over to you.
All right, thanks, Thad. All right, can everyone see my screen here?
Yes.
All right, so hi everyone. I'm Mike Schott. I'm a product specialist out of the Rexel, Erie, Pennsylvania office, formerly known as Winkle Electric. For those of you that don't know me, I've been with Winkle for about 2 years, and we are creeping up on half a year here with Rexel. So what I figured I'd do, as Thad said, we'll kind of go over the software, the connected component software, and we're going to look at a conversion. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to do the conversion first and get some logic in there, and then we'll poke around in connected components. So one of the first things I like to kind of show people is some user guides and documentation on the conversion process, just to let you know that there's some stuff out there to look at. And specifically, I'm gonna drill down into the project conversion. To show you, it's a pretty good guide. It goes a step by step through it and shows you screenshots of the software and what you need to do. So that's one way that you can kind of understand what's going to happen before you do it. So I'm going to close that. We're going to get started here. I have a kind of a dummy, MicroLogix 1400 program here, and this program does nothing. So don't yell at me if it looks like it's really bad programming. I just meant to put in some examples of different objects to show you how they convert. So you see, I have some inputs here and a timer, a compare instruction, and some comments on each of the rungs. And here on rung 5, I actually put an instruction that does not convert into connected components workbench. So we'll see what happens when you get an instruction that doesn't convert. And then I have a JSR here. I have an additional program file just to show you how some of that will convert in as well. So the first thing we'll do, and this is in those migration guides, is we're gonna actually save it out as a .slc file. And one of the other things we'll need to do is check this export database checkbox so that we get our documentation to go with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it. We get our little summary window here. It looks like everything went through okay. And so I'm going to drop this down for the moment. We're going to open up connected components. You see this is version 20. What we're going to do is we're going to use the migration tool, put that logic in there. I'll show you what it looks like when it converts, and then we can poke around a little bit. So from the tools, this is the connected components workbench, main window. It's blank, of course. And so we're going to go to the tools menu here, and right away at the top there's this MicroLogix to MicRO800 converter tool. We're going to open that up. And this is going to step us through the rest of the way. Another thing I'm going to note, again, there's a help button here. So if you get this open, this will take you to a help file that will, again, explain what to do, how to do it. There's links on the side here that will go over each and every detail of how this tool works, as well as the rest of connected components workbench if you want to do a search for something. So we're going to go along here to step 1, and we're just going to select our library file that we created in the previous step. And this window is only showing the files with the .slc extension, but there are those other documentation files that are in there. And we're going to hit open. And this is that checkbox that's going to reference those other documentation files. They'll have the same name with a different file extension. But if for some reason you haven't saved as a different name, you can uncheck that and go browse for them there. Next step, we're going to pick our controller. And I'm going to go ahead and pick a new one. So this will give us a new catalog number. And if you want, you can drop down some target details to make sure that controller you selected will work for you. This last option is checked by default. And what that's going to do is going to concatenate some of the instruction descriptions to the variable comment. And I'll show what that means later. So we're going to hit OK, and it's going to bring that MicroLogix 1400 program in, convert it to connected components workbench. And what we're going to do as that's converting, we're actually going to look at these side by side to see how it compares, what it looked like before and what it looks like now. Excuse me. So the first thing I'm going to kind of go over is what happens to the data files. That's a big difference in an RSLogix 500 program and then a connected components. There's no data files. So what actually happens, and for those of you that aren't familiar with connected components, this is, on the left-hand side here we have our controller organizer, and it looks very similar to a 5000 based software. And we're going to go into the controller variables. And these are the variables that can be accessed throughout any program in the controller. And what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and we're going to look here. These are the data tables or the data files that have been created. And they're very similar to how they look in RSLogix 500. So if you look over here on the left, you'll see it's essentially just a table of integers, right, that you access at the bit level. So what that did was it created an array of integers, and again, you access them on the bit level. So very similar structure. It just, pre-allocates those tags for you based on the data files that were in your project, and then you would obviously use each of those bits in there. And the same thing is done for your other data files. You have your timer. There's a timer array here showing 5 elements, I'm sorry. To mimic what was in your RSLogix 500 program, and on with the rest of the data files. So that's where all of your tags are likely going to be coming from. So now I want to kind of just show how the inputs and outputs map. You'll see that it does map, your inputs here to the, input 0 gets mapped to input 0 on the base PLC here, and you see these symbols get put in as an alias tag that's associated with that input. So if you're in your project and you want to reference either one of these, it'll reference the same input. Okay. So let's jump into the logic here. And one other item I'm going to just point out to here, you'll notice I have the theme as a Logix theme. You can change this to the default theme, which I believe is the IEC symbols. And it will also change your project organizer a bit. But it shows some slightly different symbols. It organizes things a little differently. I know most people like to leave it on that Logix theme, so it feels more familiar to you. So we're going to look at this side by side here, and you'll see it. The instructions come in, the rungs come in just the same as they were. Our inputs and our output, our rung comments came in from those documentation files. And the first thing I want to point out here is our timer instruction. The timer instruction that's built into Connected Components Workbench is not identical to the timer in RSLogix 500. So what the conversion tool does is it creates a user-defined function block that mimics that behavior from RSLogix 500. It's kind of a typical programming response. If you don't have a piece of software that does what you need it to, you just kind of make it, right? So that's what happened here. This is a user-defined function block or an add-on instruction as they listed here. And if you like, you can actually drill down into that logic in that block to see how it works. But that will give you all of the same input and output parameters that you would get from the timer block that's used in your MicroLogix controller. So we'll scroll down here. I'm going to jump down to the end here, and we'll note this ladder 3 instruction. This is a user-defined function, and what that is going to do is mimic the program file, the JSR instruction that we have here on the left, right? So our ladder 3 program file just has a simple rung on it, and what we'll do here, we can drill down in here to show the function, and it has the same logic in it. So that's kind of how the conversion tool handles, multiple program files. And next, what I want to show here, just the next rung up, this is that instruction that I knew wasn't going to convert. And if we go to actually build this project, right, it'll throw an error at us, and we can see what actually happened. So this is my output window telling me what's going on, and as it's building it, it'll show me that one failed, and a little different. So what actually happened was this created a dummy instruction here that can be seen in our add-on instruction list, and it's actually empty. So it's more of a placeholder. So I put this run comment in here that says that this user-defined function block was created empty. You need to manually create equivalent logic for the function block. So basically, you'll have to go in and complete this to get the same function out of it. Okay, I'm going to pause here. If there's any questions, just shout them at me or put them in the chat, and then we'll just kind of poke around real quick at the rest of the software to see what it looks like. All right, I'm going to keep going. So you'll see, I'm going to eliminate this. We're going to be done with RSLogix 500. So this is connected components workbench. You'll see it's organized similar to if you're familiar with Studio 5000. So you'll have your tasks and your main task and a program, and then this is would be like your routine where your logic exists, and you can have your ladder editor or your structured text, and we can add function block diagram here for your different programming languages. And you'll see you can build your own add-on instructions, just like this timer block here. You can build whatever you want and drop it into your logic. So that's another nice feature you can have. And again, you have your data types down here, user-defined data types and such. You'll see across the top here, there's a toolbar. This is all your programming instructions. You can page through to see what all is there. And basically, you just, if you have an instruction, you can drag it down to the rung where you would just assign a variable to it, and then you define the scope of your variable, whether it be a program tag or a controller variable. And like Thad said, if you didn't want to convert the entire program, you could always do a copy paste of a handful of rungs and paste them right in here. So as long as you have your data tables set up, or quote unquote data tables, it will all the tags will come in, and vice versa from Studio 5000, you could do a copy and paste right in here. And again, you can view the project organizer, right? And this is where you would add other devices. So if you wanted to add an HMI in your project, you could add a drive and any of these other device categories. You can add right into the same project file. So if you have a system or a machine with various items in it, you put all your programming in the same file and you keep it all in one place. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. If there's any questions, by all means, shout them in or shout them out.
Hey, this is Thad again. One thing I want to mention to everybody is when this was first released, a lot of people said, well, this programming language does not look like RSLogix 500 or RSLogix 5 or RSLogix 5000 / Studio 5000, which is correct. It does not look the same. But lateral logic is lateral logic no matter how you go about doing it. And the analogy I use with this, if you go into this software with an open mind and don't expect it to be a certain way, it is a very easy software to use and to utilize. But it's the same way when we started using Studio 5000 and people go, where's my data tables? Well, in Studio 5000, there was no data tables. You had your variables. You had your tags you created. Same thing here. Timers and counters look a little bit different, but they function the same. Your instructions look a little bit different, but they function the same. So as long as you go in with an open mind, there's plenty of videos out there, like Mike mentioned, to go over this process from migrating from a MicroLogix to a MicRO800, or if you want to understand about different processes or how certain things are done, there's plenty of videos out there on the Rockwell YouTube channel, Rexel's YouTube channel, variety of other companies and people have posted things out there about how to do things. Just again, there's a whole bunch of information out there, but again, if you go into it as a open-minded, you'll be much better. I just want to mention that. Sorry, Mike, back to you.
Nope, I agree, Thad. I completely agree. You know, this software will do just anything you need it to, as long as you understand that it's, you know, it's not going to be the same as something else, but it's perfectly capable of getting anything you need done. But that's all I had.
Hey, Thad and Mike, there is one question in the chat session right now. Here's the question. What is the difference in CCW versions? I have developer edition version 10. Should I upgrade to 20?
Mike, you go ahead and answer that.
Well, I since it's a free, you know, a free edition. Well, the developer edition isn't. You know, I don't see why you wouldn't upgrade to version 20, especially since you know, the new catalog numbers are coming out, and you will need version 20 to support those new catalogs. Thad, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, prior to version 20 just shipped today, or like this last month. Prior to that, we were at version 13. Okay, as each version from 10 to 11 to 12 to 13, we added more functionality to handle the additional or the newer controllers. There was always enhancements in how the software gets installed and how it works. You know, different things like the Logix and default theme, there's things added to that makes it more user friendly. The biggest thing is now with version 20, it is works with Windows 11. It operates and boots up faster than any of the previous versions. It supports the newer controllers, the 850 and the 870 with the new E designation in the part number. So really, I would really recommend upgrading to that because you add much higher functionality, install process is better, across the board, major improvements, especially with 11 on. So if you had some frustrations with some of the earlier versions, you know, of how it operates and stuff like that, and I would definitely go to a higher version, hands down. But again, the focus from Rockwell is to migrate everybody away from the MicroLogix for a couple of reasons. First, the MicRO800 is a higher functioning controller. It does a lot more than the MicroLogix line. You'll come in at a lower cost. I'm saying about probably 95% of the time you'll come in at a couple $100 less, or maybe even down to maybe half, depending on what your application is. And this is something that Rockwell's promoting going forward. If you look at any type of literature out there from Rockwell, even though we still sell the 1400, it is really just not talked about. So even though I stated 2030 is the obsolescence date on the 1400, that could always change, and that's what concerns me, and that's what started this process of us doing this webinar, is just informing customers about the current status of the MicroLogix and where we think it's going to head.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that concludes our webinar for today. As I mentioned, this webinar was being recorded, so it'll be posted out on our YouTube channel probably later this week. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Thad, Mike, and we'll get your questions answered.